We'll refer to this macro trend as adjusting to the economy, or the consumer reset, brought to you by the Great Recession. We all know what brought us the Great Recession. It was caused by the subprime mortgage meltdown, where we had new terms like exotic securities, toxic assets, or illiquid investments. All of it made worse by a spike in energy costs during the summer of 2008. We also know all too well the effects of the recession, the massive mortgage defaults, the credit market that tightened up for banks, for companies, and for consumers, the stock market becoming volatile, and then the labor market becoming really tough, and on and on and on. There was a lot of news about the recession, certainly no shortage. But to make this all more manageable, let's look at some specific micro trends, starting with credit. Credit will be used with greater caution. We cite an example that we found in the LA Times, where a couple owned a 2001 Chevy Suburban and still owed $9,500 on it. They traded it in for a new pickup truck, a 2008 model, and they rolled the old debt into the new vehicle. So now the result is they're driving a $44,726 pickup truck that they'll be paying off over the next 7 years. You know, that's an extreme example, but the fact is, in 2008, the average car loan was 64 months, and 45% of car loans were written for longer than 60 months. Not exactly a sustainable credit model. And it's not just vehicles and mortgages that people are waking up to. There's a lot of credit card debt out there too. A lot of people fearing that that will be the next round of unsecured debt to default. So don't be surprised if consumers are a little bit skittish about jumping on credit card offers that could seem a little bit pushy. Next micro trend. Things are not always as they seem. I'm going to use the financial industry as an example here, but you could apply it in many ways. Think about this. Bear Stearns, Merrill Lynch, Lehman Brothers. These are amazing brands that had seemingly been around forever, and we thought they would be around forever, but they're not. They were absorbed by other banks or even chopped up and sold in little pieces. And it's not just the financial community. GM is euthanizing Pontiac. Linens and Things is gone. Circuit City is gone. Washington Mutual and Wachovia are going through an iteration. So some of those long-standing brands are seemingly disappearing or evaporating before our eyes. The next micro trend, sometimes things are exactly as they seem. And by that I mean this. You know, for a good part of 2007 and almost all of 2008, the consumer knew something was not right. But anytime it was brought up in the mainstream media, there was a little bit of pushback from the experts. The White House or the Fed or the Treasury would say, oh, no. You know, technically, recession is defined as negative growth in the GDP, and technically, we're not in a recession yet. Well, in December 2008, it was finally announced that, yes, we are in a recession. And furthermore, we have been in a recession for a full year. Now, when all that news broke, the consumer didn't say, oh gosh, the sky is falling, and panic. They said, glad you folks finally figured it out, because we've known down here in our little neck of the woods that things have been not right for quite a while. So the reaction was more, told you so. The next micro trend, people are reviewing their investments and hedging for retirement. You know, boomers, among others, have long questioned whether Social Security was going to be a financial plan for retirement. Well, now, we're wondering whether our 401ks and IRAs are going to be as strong as we had once thought. So lots of people reevaluating their retirement and investment plans right now. Next micro trend, we're hedging our employment. You know, consumers know that during and after every recession, there is a contraction in the labor market. So we're thinking about things we could do to create hedge employment or supplemental income, or working really hard to preserve our job security. The next micro trend could be thought of as simply the fuel economy. Gas prices got very expensive in the summer of 2008. $4.50 in the U.S., $1.55 a liter in Canada. Petrol was not cheap, and we remember it. It's nice that gas has been a little bit more reasonable since then, but we all know that we're one international incident away from very high petroleum prices again. The next micro trend, it's a buyer's market. It seems like everything is on sale. I use the example that Even wine in California is on sale. And the challenge that that creates for a lot of advertisers is that once upon a time, sales events were used to drive traffic. They were special events. Well, now, sales are ubiquitous. So if you're running a sale, you're exactly not being unique. The next microtrend, trust but verify. Lots of companies suffered bankruptcy as a result of the recession. This is a snapshot of the web page for Bombay Trading Company, and the red box at the bottom basically says this: if you hold a gift card to Bombay Trading Company, you are no more important than any other unsecured creditor, so stand in line. Basically, it means your Bombay Trading Company gift card is not worth the plastic it's printed on. But let's turn a bit of a corner here, because the next microtrend is that negativity becomes toxic, and we know it. Back in February 2009, Geithner talked about the adverse feedback loop, where people see the stock market fall, so they're less inclined to go shopping, build a new home, buy a car, go out to restaurants. When all of that consumption drops, then the stock market's natural reaction is to fall further, and on and on and on and on. And the consumer has figured out they have a role in all of this. The consumer knows they can't just quit spending and wait for the economy to recover, that spending drives economic recovery. Consumer realizes they need to ignore what they cannot control and focus on what they can control. In other words, not worry so much about what's going on Wall Street or in Washington or Ottawa, as may be the case. And instead, they need to focus on what they can control, how they spend their money on Main Street, and how they run their household on Elm Street. Now, the final microtrend we'll talk about for this segment: I can live more cost efficiently and be happy. For a long time at CSS, we've been talking about how people suffer from stuffication. What that means is we've spent a lifetime gathering things, and we're drowning in our stuff. Well, as a part of the consumer reset, increasingly, people are learning that what I have is not as important as what I have done. That cooking at home can be fun. It can be kind of an event to be shared with the family. That learning or relearning some old board games can be fun, sitting around with the family around the kitchen table. We've heard about a lot of folks getting back to basics, and we think that this basic trend kind of drives a lot of that. Now, just like any other macro trend, there is a counter trend to the great consumer reset. The first one we'll start with is overwhelming abundance. While it may be true that most consumers cannot afford to buy everything, many consumers can still afford to buy almost anything. But we're making more choices. We're deliberating. We're being a little bit more careful. The other microtrend we should mention is a concept called meconomics. You talk to some consumers whose job has been very secure through all of this. Thank you very much. Their economy is doing just fine. And in fact, they're doing better than ever because surrounded by so many sales, their dollars are more powerful than they've been in a long, long time. So while the consumer reset is definitely a trend, there are counter trends too. So speaking of adjusting to the economy or the great consumer reset, we've covered some causes and effects, some micro trends and counter trends. Now it's time to think about the most important step, implications. Think about your key and target accounts. Take a little time and think it over.